Charles II, the merry monarch of England, was famous for his lavish court, endless entertainments, and a monarchy restored after the bloody Civil War. But in 1685, his sudden and mysterious death shocked the entire court and left behind questions that remain unanswered to this day. What truly killed this king, and why? When his body was examined, did the findings inside make future generations shudder? Don't miss this journey with us as we uncover the mystery behind the death of Charles II. If you love dramatic history, chilling secrets buried for centuries, then hit subscribe now, turn on the notification bell, and never miss a story. Because history always hides more truth than you think. On the morning of February 2nd, 1685, what seemed like an ordinary day at Whitehall Palace suddenly turned into a nightmare. King Charles II, while sitting for a simple shave, was struck by violent convulsions. Courtiers later recalled how his face turned ashen. His body shook uncontrollably, and then he collapsed. Unconscious, the dreadful news spread quickly through the palace. The king, once so often seen laughing at banquets, now lay bedridden, surrounded by anxious faces. The royal physicians were summoned at once. But 17th century medicine was riddled with limitations and errors. For nearly a week, Charles was subjected to brutal treatments. More than half a litre of blood was drawn. He was forced to ingest mercury solutions, given harsh purgatives, and even powders made from pigeon droppings to draw out the poison. Attendants noted that the king's body deteriorated hour by hour. His breathing grew labored. His words slurred until they were barely intelligible. Inside the palace, whispers of suspicion spread. Some claimed the king had been poisoned by Catholic factions, eager for his brother James, Duke of York, to ascend the throne. Others believed it was simply the inevitable collapse of a body worn down by years of indulgence wine. Women and misguided medicine. Modern medical experts, when revisiting the records, have offered several theories. Dr. Harold Cook, a historian of medicine, argued that Charles II's symptoms aligned with chronic kidney disease leading to stroke. Meanwhile, a team of researchers at the British Medical Journal pointed to his blackened teeth and metallic breath as clear indicators of long-term mercury poisoning, likely the result of constant exposure to medications and cosmetics containing heavy metals. Yet many historians have asked were the remedies administered in his final days not only useless, but the very cause of his rapid demise. Some even suspect political intrigue, suggesting that Charles's sudden death conveniently paved the way for James II, a Catholic king, to claim the throne and ignite religious tensions across England. On February 6th, 1685, after only 4 days of agony, Charles II breathed his last at the age of 54. The court was plunged into mourning, but behind the walls of Whitehall, whispers of conspiracy and an unnatural death continued to haunt his legacy. The death of Charles II did not end with a simple medical conclusion. It quickly became fertile ground for speculation, where truth mixed with palace intrigue and the maneuvers of power. One theory suggests that it was Charles's own debauchery and excess that silently dug his grave. Modern medical historians point out that the king's body showed all the signs of syphilis, a disease widespread among the nobility of the time. If true, the remedies administered by his physicians, particularly mercury-based treatments, did not save him, but hastened his death. Another theory reaches further. Could there have been a political plot already in motion? The sudden death of Charles II cleared the way for his brother James II, a devout Catholic, to ascend the throne. In a Protestant England still deeply suspicious of Rome, James's succession was the spark that ignited greater upheavals. Some historians argue that powerful factions seeking to shift the balance of power may have ensured that Charles's death came sooner than it naturally would have. Other researchers emphasize the role of outdated medicine. In the 17th century, treatment was still guided by the belief in balancing the body's four humours. For Charles II, this meant extreme interventions, bloodletting, induced vomiting, purgatives, and toxic herbal concoctions. Physicians of the time believed they were restoring balance, but modern science views it as little more than killing the patient in the attempt to save him. Finally, some toxicologists raise the possibility was Charles II slowly poisoned over many years, rather than only in his final days. If so, the culprits may have been his very own physicians, whether through ignorance or intent by repeatedly prescribing remedies that steadily infused his body with lethal substances. No theory carries absolute proof, but together, they point to a single reality. The death of Charles II was the outcome of a complex web of illness, flawed medicine, and political ambition. And it is precisely this ambiguity that has made his death one of the most haunting medical and political mysteries in the history of the English monarchy. The medical theories are only part of the story. To truly understand the mysterious death of Charles II, we must look inside his private life, the royal court filled with endless pleasures, powerful mistresses, and political intrigues hidden behind palace doors. Charles II was called the Merry Monarch, for good reason. His court became one of the most decadent in 17th century Europe. Records show that the king had at least a dozen acknowledged mistresses, including famous figures such as Barbara Palmer, the Duchess of Cleveland, and Nell Gwynn, the actress beloved by the public as the nation's mistress. The revels, the drinking, and the long nights in the royal bedchambers were not merely personal indulgences. They were also instruments of politics. Every mistress, every illegitimate child, became a piece in the game of power. Charles II's court was like a chessboard, where beauty, sex, and influence intertwined, ultimately creating a suffocating and treacherous web. Historians argue that this libertine lifestyle had direct consequences for the king's health. His symptoms matched those of syphilis, a disease widely spread through the aristocracy of the time. If true, the pain, the neurological decline, and finally, his sudden death may have been the inevitable result of years of excess within the royal household. But behind the walls of Whitehall, there were other secrets. Shadowy accounts suggest that the king's pleasures were never purely carnal. His bedchambers were arenas where political factions sought influence through intimacy, where mistresses whispered about titles for their children, and where enemies of the crown may have found opportunities to sow poison. Even today, scholars debate could the substances found in his body, mercury, antimony, and other toxins, have been not only the product of misguided medicine, but also the legacy of a court steeped in temptation and danger. The debauchery of Charles II, the secrets of his court, and the invisible hands moving in the shadows all seem to have woven the tragic veil that descended upon the death of a king who once seemed immortal in his pleasures. The death of Charles II did not merely end a reign of feasting and a decadent court. It opened a new, turbulent chapter in England's history. When Charles breathed his last in February 1685, the crown immediately passed to his brother, James, Duke of York, a devout Catholic. In a kingdom where the majority of subjects and nobles had turned to Protestantism, the accession of James II became the spark that ignited political and religious crisis. Just 3 years later, in 1688, England was shaken by the Glorious Revolution. James II was overthrown, and the throne passed to William III and Mary II. Historians looking back recognize that the sudden death of Charles II altered the course of history. Had he lived only a few more years, James II might never have secured the throne, and the balance of religion and politics in Europe could have shifted in an entirely different direction. Today, scientists, historians, and medical experts still debate: did Charles II die of syphilis, of a stroke, of kidney failure, of heavy metal poisoning, or from a palace conspiracy never fully revealed? No theory explains the mystery completely. Yet one truth is clear. When his body was examined, it exposed a portrait of decay in medicine, in the royal household, and in politics itself. Behind the smile of the merry monarch lay a mysterious death, where power, pleasure, and intrigue blended into an inescapable verdict. Charles II, the king who brought joy back to England after civil war, departed under suspicion, leaving behind a legacy both golden and shadowed. If you want to continue uncovering the hidden shadows behind the crown, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us on the next journey. Because history is never only what's written in the books,